Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi amma ba'd. Chapter number 137 of Riyadh as-Saliheen says, Babu salam al-rajuli ala zawjatihi wal-mar'ati min maharimihi wa ala ajnabiyyatin wa ajnabiyyatin la yakhafu al-fitnata bihinna wa salamuhunna bihadha ash-shart. Chapter 137 says, the salutations that a man can and should give to his wife and any woman whom he is a mahram for, aunt, daughter, stepdaughter, grandmother, mother-in-law, anyone who's a mahram. And the permissibility and recommendation, the allowance for a man to give salams to a woman for whom he isn't a mahram. A woman in the street, a woman that you work with, or you're in the airport, at the desk, at the counter, and you give her salams, or she gives you the salams. She is ajnabiyya. You aren't allowed to shake her hand. You can't give her a hug. You can't travel with her. You can't be alone with her. She's allowed for you, someone that you can marry. Someone that what? Someone that you can marry. And obviously, this goes to show, and we've explained this many times before for different reasons, it goes to show you the nature in Islam, the asl, the default of Islam with regards to marriage for men is polygamy and not monogamy. That's never the starting point. And the proof for that is, if the default, you say, how do you get that now? If the default for was a man to marry one woman and that's it, that would mean all other women would be what? Technically speaking, they would become what? Mahrams. A woman that he can't marry, because the sheer thought of it is unthinkable. My wife is here. But due to the fact that she isn't your daughter, your sister, your aunt, etc., she's automatically a what? A non-mahram. And the definition of mahram according to Islamic law is men yahrumu alayka az-zawaju biha ala ta'bid aw al-aks, al-rajul aw al-mar'a, someone that you can never ever marry. That's a male or female. So if you're talking to a woman, la yajuz, a woman can never marry this man, and a woman that a man can never ever marry, that is your sister. Under any circumstance can you marry your sister. Under any circumstance can you marry your mother, your grandmother, your stepdaughter. You cannot marry. Many scholars say that if you marry a woman, the moment you make the contract, the mother-in-law is off limits perpetually. And some scholars say rather you have to consummate the marriage. But your sister-in-law, your wife's sister that you would never think of, she's what? Thank you. But you just can't be married to her and the sister at the what? At the same time. May Allah prevent, your wife died on her deathbed. She said, I know you need a wife. I want you to be happy. There's no woman in the world better for you than my little sister. Methalan, as an argument, or culture. Cultures do this, many cultures. إذا مات الرجل تزوج بها أخوه حتى يعني that way it stays in the family. It's well known. Nafs fil Yemen. Same culture. Many cultures have this. So therefore, the brother-in-law and the sister-in-law is not a mahram. So if your sister-in-law, she comes over your house with her husband for dinner, you greet her, Assalamu alaikum, how you guys doing? Have a seat. You aren't allowed to shake her hand. You cannot give your sister-in-law a hug. Your wife cannot give a hug to your brother. They are ajnabi. And the reason why they're ajnabi is that the impermissibility of you marrying your sister-in-law is only restricted to you being married to her sister, your wife. You got divorced from your wife, the sister-in-law, the ex-sister-in-law is now what? Lawful. Regardless of the culture, how people look at it. We're talking about the rules of Allah. The law, not culture. Allah's laws, subhanahu, the laws that He made, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So therefore, a mahram, the definition of a mahram is a man or a woman, depending on the sex, that you can never ever what? You can never marry. So if you divorce your wife or your wife dies, your mother-in-law is always your what? It's your mahram. You can visit her, you can give her a handshake, a hug. You can never get married to her. But if there's a woman that isn't included in the maharim, he says it's also lawful. And it can be recommended for you to do what? Give the salams. Give or return. One woman أو أجنبيات, many women, as long as there's no fitna. As long as there's no fitna, in which you're afraid, you're scared, you get too friendly, too close, or her voice, or whatever the case may be, right? You keep your distance if there's fitna, right? You keep your distance, and it's an important rule. There are acts which are recommended. And there may be a time, maybe I said, could be some mandatory acts that you have to delay or step away from to avoid what? Fitna. It's dangerous once you cross over that boundary. All right? He says in وَسَلَامُهُنَّ أو سَلَامِهِنَّ على الإضافة. He says that women are allowed to give salams to non-mahram men as well. بهذا الشرط. As long as there's no fitna. So a woman, she passes by, Assalamu alaikum. That's it. Khalas. It's not like a brother you shake, hey, kif halik akhi, how you doing, blah, 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 blah. That's different. You can't touch her. You can't dap her. Right? So many people, different cultures, it's off limits to give salams to a woman, as a woman can't give salams to a man. The sunnah is a thing. Your culture, my culture, his culture is what? That's a different thing. Alright? So the rules are a thing, culture is a different thing. My wife passed by, your wife, etc. Assalamu alaikum. It's not what? It's not haram. And you give a respectable salam. It's not like flirting, staring, being loose, talking, laughing, joking. This is a different story. Right? Wallahu ta'ala alam. عن سهل بن سعد رضي الله عنه قال كانت فينا امرأة وفي رواية كانت لنا عجوز تأخذ من أصول السلق فتطرحه في القدر وتكركر حبات من شعير فإذا صلينا الجمعة وانصرفنا نسلم عليها فتقدمه إلينا رواه البخاري. قوله تكركر أي تطحن. وعن أم هانئ فاخته بنت أبي طالب رضي الله عنها أنها قالت أتيت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يوم الفتح ويغتسل وفاطمة تستره بثوب فسلمت وذكرت الحديث رواه مسلم. وعن أسماء بنت يزيد رضي الله عنها أنها قالت مر علينا النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في نسوة فسلم علينا رواه أبو داود والترمذي وقال حديث حسن. وهذا لفظ أبي داود. ولفظ الترمذي أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم مر في المسجد يوما وعصبة من النساء قعود فألوى بيده بالتسليم. So the first hadith is narrated by Sahl ibn Sa'd radiallahu anhu. There was a woman that used to live among us, and one version of the hadith says ajuz. She was a hag. That's a proper English term, by the way. It's not just slander or you cursing someone, but a hag is a term for a very old woman, ajuz. So she was a very old woman, and she used to like cook for us. She used to prepare certain things for us, baqal, vegetables, certain herbs, whatever. She would make bread, barley. She would bake for us. She would cook for us. So we would make Jumu'ah, and then he says, once sarafna, we would leave Jumu'ah, we finish Jumu'ah, and we would nusallimu alayha. We would give her the salams, fatuqaddimuhu ilayna, and she would feed us. She would offer us food. And obviously that woman, she wasn't a mahram, there was no mahram relationship between them. And that hadith is collected by Imam al-Bukhari. The next narration is reported by Han'i radiallahu anha, that one day she says, Ataytu Nabi sallallahu yawm al-Fath. I went to the Messenger of Allah on the day of the conquest of Mecca, and he was washing up. He was taking a bath. He was bathing. And Fatima radiallahu anha was covering him. No one could see his body. Right? I was behind the other side of Fatima's garment. The Messenger of Allah was taking a bath. Fatima, his daughter, was tasturuhu bi thawbin. She was covering him. Han'i was on the other side. So Han'i radiallahu anha, فسلمت, she gave him the salams. And obviously the hadith concerning a dispute that she had with another companion, right? And the Prophet says, قد أجرنا من أجرت يا هانئ. Okay, so this hadith is collected by Imam Muslim, and it's like the previous hadith clearly shows, is that there was what? Salams were given. And it goes to show you the reality of things. The Prophet was washing. It's very close. Fatima covered his body. She couldn't see his body, but they what? They spoke. So if he spoke to her while he was bathing, imagine you walking down the street, I see your daughter, this is your wife, Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh, give you salams, wa alaikum salam. Bismillah, simple, easy. Keep it moving, right? Asma bint Yazid radiallahu anha, She reports, Marra alayna, that one day the Messenger of Allah, he passed by us, a group of women, and he gave us the salams. فَسَلَّمَ عَلَيْنَا. This hadith is collected by Imam Abu Dawud in the Tirmidhi. A word in Tirmidhi states is that there were women in the masjid, qu'ud. They were sitting down. They were in a halqa, waiting for salat. The Prophet, he passed by them. He passed by this group of women that were sitting in a gathering or a group, and he alwa ilayna biyadihi bitaslim. He waved at us and gave us the salutation. And this last hadith proves many benefits. From those benefits, A, is that women in the time of the Messenger of Allah were in the masjid. Certain cultures, women should never go to the masjid, ever stay at home 24/7. That's not the sunnah. That's not the what? That's not the sunnah. Is it best for a woman to pray in her house? Is that the most, the biggest or the greatest reward that she can get from? That's a discussion concerning that hadith. But there are countless authentic hadiths that women were in the masjid with the Messenger of Allah, and Bukhari and Muslim, and many, many other sources. Last but not least, this hadith, wallahu ta'ala alam, al-zahir, that which is obvious from the hadith, that which is apparent, is that the Prophet ﷺ passed by them and they weren't in a separate, secluded section of the masjid, like a floor. Rather, we know from the hadith they were in the back. And there was no curtain or there was no barrier. The women had their section, the men and women didn't mix like this. But it wasn't how the masjids are today, in which the women are in a total different building, total different floor, and everything is based off of the electronics. Alright? There are benefits in women being totally secluded, of course. And of course, there are also many harms. Right? So just think about everybody's in the same masjid. The women get to class without the microphone. The women pray behind the imam. They pray behind the men. The children, etc., etc., etc. Right? So he passed by them. They were in their gathering. What's the chances of the Prophet ﷺ going in another building? I.e., they were what? He was leaving the masjid and he passed by them. Whether they were on the brother's side or on the men's side. And many people, they have misunderstandings concerning men and women mixing. There are zealots far right, everything's haram. There's zealots far left, nothing is haram. Men and women should just sit and talk and have tea and donuts and just, bust it up and laugh and joke. And then there are a few people who have the proper fiqh, who know when men and women who aren't mahrams can mix and how they should mix and what are the rulings of mixing. Right? Many people, they